Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. It's Mark, with another edition of Mark My Words and Friends. I'm going to bring Steve on a little bit. I thought I'd tell you first what we've got on the agenda today. The reason why I'd mentioned last time that I had always wanted to make some content featuring maybe a consulting job or a handful of consulting jobs, just to sort of peel back some of the curtain on that and show a little bit of the work that I do and maybe another perspective on the industry that dealers or some of the other stakeholders that follow along might find interesting. But it's this one particular job that I'm working on that I really wanted to talk about now that became sort of the impetus for making this content now. And that's this survey. I've written about it a number of times, gotten a number of dealers who have reached out and interested in participating. As I'm recording this, I think I mentioned the date is April 22nd, so we'll probably be next week doing those surveys. And it was the opportunity to ask dealers what they think about their relationships with their manufacturers, to get into their psyche like that, which made this job so compelling to me to do. I was really glad when the client signed on for it, as well as so compelling to sort of access this data because there's really nobody that's ever done any sort of research on anything like that. And so I'm excited to be able to dig into that. And so I'm expecting, I think I mentioned in my blog, we're going to be questioning retailers within three categories. We're going to be questioning retailers in the Benjamin Moore segment, in the Pittsburgh segment, as well as the non-aligned independent paint and hardware retailer will be treated as sort of one segment. The surveys are going to be done double blind, and I've written the questions intending to try to evoke some provocative, short but provocative conversations, and we're then paying dealers to sit with me. And as I'm recording this, I'm hoping tomorrow I'll get final approval for how we handle the payment and how much they're making. But we're going to pay them some amount of money to sit with me for probably 45 minutes. And then I'm going to compile all this data. And of course, I won't be able to share the data. It belongs to somebody else. But nonetheless, I will have seen it, and so from that standpoint, I will have sort of looked into the dealer's soul. I wrote about that in that way. And I feel like I'm excited for that opportunity. So I'm going to bring Steve on and we're going to talk a little bit about that job. And I'm excited to hear what retailers have to say. And let's bring on Steve.
Did you have a third gig that you're working on then that you wanted to talk about?
So
Yeah.
I got hired to test the dealer sentiment towards paint manufacturing partners.
Oh boy.
And right,
We're gonna
somebody
be on,
want
we're gonna be on this call for about 12 hours, aren't we?
we're going to be here for a while, right? I'm going to light a joint. I'm going to light a joint. And so somebody, I can't say who, wanted to know what dealers thought of their manufacturers. And you can understand why they would want to know that.
Hmm.
The industry has gone through dramatic changes over the last number of years, starting with COVID.
Right.
What's going on right now with Pittsburgh has created
Hmm.
enormous disturbance.
Right.
Others obviously see it as opportunity, I'm sure. And so the Kelly Moore situation and others, affected retailers, but also other changes that people don't really keep like front of mind, but True Value and changes at Ace with their relationship with Benjamin Moore. And so
Yeah.
a lot of the way dealers, independents, be they branded stores or sort of true independent paint or true independent
Yeah.
unbranded hardware stores,
Like a mom
a
and
lot
pop.
of that has
Hmm.
changed, right? Mom and
Hmm.
pop is what I was going for. Yeah. A lot of that distribution is sort of unknown and untested and has been changing and
Right.
grew and sort of tested its boundaries over the last bunch of years. And there's somebody who wants to know sort of where all that has
Hmm.
landed. What I've been doing is trying to write questions that will get to the root. You don't want to give a survey and say, Steve, what do you think of those headphones that you're using?
Yeah.
Because Steve's going to say, well, they're all right. My ears
Yeah. Yeah, they're fine.
don't hurt. They're working. Thanks
But,
so much. But
mhm.
what if I were to say to you, start with Steve, are you concerned about the way the wires hang and the way you look on the video because of that?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so those are the sort of questions that, because of my experience, I can get to, which is why they're not just hiring a marketing firm. There are marketing firms
Right.
that can do this for them. You can hire a marketing firm, and for, whatever, $100, $1,000, whatever it is, a price per person, they'll go and they'll ask questions and take surveys. But
Right. But that's really an art and a skill to be able to write good survey questions to get at the results that you really want to get at.
that project started with, what do they want to know? And then once I had that, then it becomes my job to ask the questions, to design the questions
Hmm.
that will get a dealer to answer what they want to know.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so then what we do is, I'll do these one at a time because they're private conversations, unrecorded, double blind. So
Hmm.
the dealer will never know who paid me to do this, and who paid me to do this will never know the name of the dealer.
Hmm.
And I'll ask these questions. We have them in different questions for different categories. Obviously, Benjamin Moore is sort of its own segment. Pittsburgh is sort of its own
Hmm.
segment. And then the unbranded, and that's actually a bigger segment than you think. There's a lot of
Yeah.
numbers there. I'm not sure how much paint they're selling, but we want to find that out.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of regionals and stuff. Kelly Moore was one example. They went out of business, but there were
Yeah.
regionals all over. They had 100 dealers.
Right.
They want to find all of that out. And so once we get the final questions approved, which I think will be in the next week or 2 weeks or whatever, then it'll be my job to get on the phone with dealers. I don't know if you noticed in my blog over the last couple of weeks, I had a little link where you could
Right.
get in
For the
touch if you
survey.
wanted,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't know if you clicked it, but I had a page up on my website
Hmm.
that gave a little information. And basically, I'm just waiting to find out they're going to pay, so usually they pay 150 to $200. We got to figure out how we're going to do it. It'll be probably some sort of gift card, an Amazon gift card or something, to sit for a half an hour's worth of questions with me. And I'll have a little spreadsheet in front of me. I'll be making
Yeah.
notes. I'll be noting your answers. And then we'll be using that information to collate, the whole thing, get an outcome, and that's it. It belongs to
Yeah.
them. Unfortunately,
Give it to them and then they can do what they will. Yeah.
they can do it. They will. I'm hopeful that they'll let me publish some of it.
Hmm.
It's such private information, and they've paid so much to create this that I understand when they say no, which they will.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a way for me to take some inferences from it that I can
Uh,
share.
yeah. I get it. I
And
know nothing about it other than I'm already curious to hear what
yeah,
what the
yeah, yeah,
findings
yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah. Well, listen, we can take some guesses. We can take some guesses about two of the three categories.
Hmm.
We can take some guesses about the unbranded or the regionally or less
Hmm.
branded. They either have, uh, are in a market where they see limited opportunity for paint,
Hmm.
or they have some sort of specialty or niche market where that little, regional or some other alternative arrangement, can work for them.
Yeah.
Or they're frustrated and they wish they had an opportunity and they could use a responsible vendor.
Right.
That's what they're going to say. We know that
Yeah.
because, we want to hear the specifics. We have good questions. I don't want to poo-poo that.
Yep.
But basically that's kind of sort of what we know. And I would say the same thing about the Pittsburgh channel.
Yeah.
I haven't even done one of these yet, so I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I can tell you
Hmm.
what the outcome is likely to be.
Right.
They must be enormously frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to Pittsburgh dealers. The ones I'm talking to are expressing this. Obviously, until we put some numbers to it, I wouldn't draw any conclusions. But the ones
Yeah.
I'm talking to are expressing a deep frustration
Yeah.
and concerns that they're, heavily invested in these stores, and that these guys may suck for 3 years and sell them again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, you've written, kind of extensively, or kind of updated us on um, what's come across your desk. Anything since the last blog on what you're hearing, or just
not
or,
really, except to say it's all for sale.
or therein is the problem in a sense, is that dealers aren't hearing anything.
No,
Yeah.
dealers are hearing nothing. And not just the dealers, Steve, the
Yeah.
employees of the new Pittsburgh that I'm in
Yeah.
touch with, which I I wouldn't I wouldn't guess the total number that I'm in touch with loosely at this point, but it's
Hmm.
very, very high.
Yeah.
Dozens,
Well, I know you've applied for
dozens.
the vice president of
I
retail
did. I haven't
sales.
heard
So
I
I'm
haven't
thinking
heard
when
back
we're
yet.
done, you're going to be on that interview call.
Exactly. And so we know the Pittsburgh dealers are going to be frustrated,
Yeah.
and I know just from talking to them, they're pissed their job quotes are taking so long to get, and that the new
Hmm.
ownership has not been as competitive. And so we'll find out some other things as well, but we're going to at least find out that out, because the people I'm in touch with are telling me that. But what do Benjamin Moore dealers think of their relationship with
Hmm.
Benjamin Moore?
Hmm.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. The all pro dealers, they talk about it. But outside of that group, who else even caucuses?
Yeah.
Who else even gets the opportunity
Yeah.
to get together with another, right? I mean, I'd see the all pro dealers. I think they just had a show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You'd see them once a year, so they get to talk to each other a little bit about it, and they may even share some of that information a little
Yeah.
bit. So that small little group of people
Yeah.
may know if the relationship is ebbing and flowing, but nobody else knows.
And a lot of that's just anecdotal too. People
And
just swapping
right,
stories. Here's what my
right.
rep said, and here's what my senior vice president said, and
Nobody's ever done any sort of in-depth analysis. In fact, even this opportunity, I'm hoping for more. 'Cause I want bigger numbers. I've asked them if they want to add a kind of a big extra
yeah.
by making the job that much bigger by talking to more dealers, because
Yeah.
this would be fascinating information. It's really trying to get an understanding of what they're missing in their business from a partner on the other side, if anything,
Right.
and understanding it from that perspective.
Yeah.
What
Right.
else they would need to excel that they currently do not have access to.
Right. Or
Right.
the dreaded, they don't know that they don't know. Hmm.
That's exactly right. It's not for curiosity's sake. It's because I suspect that somebody is contemplating a business plan
Hmm. Hmm.
based on this data. And so,
Sure.
listen, the people that make their business plans based on data are the smart ones. So let them go get their
Yeah.
data. I make a few bucks. They pay me to talk to, friends and family.
Yeah. What a
What could
great
be?
gig.
I've got the number of dealers that I need, with the exception of the regional and unbranded,
Hmm.
which is a little harder, but I'll be able to do it in,
Yeah.
another maybe one or two more blogs.
Sure.
But I've got the number of dealers that I need. There was no shortage. I actually basically had it fulfilled after the first mention,
Yeah. Good. Good.
because dealers want to talk.
They
Dealers
want
want
to
to,
talk.
and so my goal is going to be to uh, try to get something
Hmm.
that the owner doesn't want, or the owner is willing to share.
Hmm.
Try to get something from that information, and share with everybody here, so that we can understand ourselves a little bit better as dealers. The more we know about each other and what we have in common in our views and our beliefs, the better it is for all of us. And
Right.
so, and then maybe it turns into a good business plan for somebody and they make
Sure.
some money, which I
Yeah.
think that's great. That's great too. That's what I won't be around for that. I plan on having my feet up at that point, but
But if you can
whatever.
facilitate it,
And have fun. I want to be going to the same group of people, these same
doing
friends.
fun things with cool
Uh,
people.
and
Yeah.
I want to be doing fun things with cool people. And if not, I
Hmm.
get my social security check
You don't
unless
need it.
Elon
Yeah.
Musk takes it.
Yeah.
Right. I get my social security, my first one in August.
Yeah.
That was the plan. And so if anything that feels good and I enjoy, I'm gonna do. And that's why I'm
Hmm.
doing these gigs now that I was just talking about. And I've actually been approached by one other international manufacturer in our space. I'll
Hmm.
have to leave it there for now.
Yeah.
Everybody starts the conversation when they call me basically the same way. All the commercial ventures, they all
Hmm.
start the same way. That's what they wanted to do is it's sort of an idea that they think will make for a profitable business model where they're able to reach independent retailers. Their goal before they call me is that there's opportunity in the channel. And I think that for the most part, I
Hmm.
think the independent channel has grown dramatically in size over the last 5 or 6 years, probably double.
The independent channel
The independent channel.
at the expense of the big box,
So I
the
think that a
national
lot of
companies.
that is has come from an expanded market,
Yeah.
and a lot of that has come from uh, marginally higher market share. But on a market as big as ours, it makes a big difference to an independent. Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I do think that the reason why now two foreign companies, international companies that I'm speaking to, one who's already hired me, and this one
Hmm.
I was just telling you about who's interested in hiring me or considering hiring me, I should say. Let's hope they're interested. Uh, they're thinking about making large investments. This job that I'm working on, they're considering a very large investment right now.
Hmm.
And they're doing that because they think that there's opportunity here, right? What they I don't create this opportunity. What I'm doing is really just helping inform their decision making,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
than anything else. And so I think that information that I've been providing is showing that yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here. This
Yeah.
segment has grown dramatically over the last bunch of years. I do think that Trump's tariffs and probably just a little running out of steam is going to make for a difficult time. Who knows what the next couple of years is going to bring. But no, I think that the independent channel is as strong as it's ever been,
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah.
and I forecast sort of continued success for it.
Yeah. Excellent.
You
That's
know,
awesome.
they have a great partner in Benjamin Moore for the
Hmm.
big piece of the channel. In that, I'll give them credit now for being more efficient and better run than they've been in certainly any time in the last 20 years of my
In
experience
your
with them,
time. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And so I give them credit for that. I give them credit for really doing an outstanding job with their brand and with creating opportunities for dealers to make money. Benjamin Moore dealers, generally speaking, are profitable. They are able to do that in an environment where they don't have to deal with, frankly, the bullshit created by Pittsburgh jettisoning that whole division, that
Yeah.
whole architectural coatings division. And now, listen, if you're owned by private equity, I don't care if you're doing well or not, you're still stuck with private equity ownership, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
private equity.
Right.
And Ben Moore dealers don't have that problem. And so right now, I wonder, probably Dan wonders himself, what Trump's economy changes are going to bring to the
Yeah.
channel. And
Hmm.
probably we all are going to get a little bit of a haircut here. But nonetheless, when it's done, Warren Buffett's still going to own Benjamin Moore.
Yeah.
They're still going to have enough assets and resources to meet their dealers' needs. This situation with Canada is likely to be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be able to make those changes. They'll have access to money if they need to buy another factory or
Yeah.
reopen another factory. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of access to resources for that. And what I feel is probably the biggest advantage of that ownership, which is not just that they don't have to worry that they're not going to be sold in 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
but that leadership at Ben Moore doesn't have to create a quarterly return
Right.
that gets looked at on CNBC every month or every
Yeah.
quarter. An executive in the circumstance of Dan Calkins, where his ownership, we know, takes a long term perspective.
Mm-hmm.
An executive in that circumstance has the ability to be strategic in their
Right.
thinking in a way that an executive who works for a public corporation does not have the ability to be.
Right.
And an executive who works in a firm owned by private equity does not have the ability to be.
Right.
And so, just taking this situation with these tariffs as an example, who knows what impact this is going to have on, I'll just pick a name, Rust-Oleum or anybody else. They're shipping paint all across and back and forth across the border
Mm-hmm.
that they are now going to have to stop doing because otherwise the paint's going to go up in price 25%. Dan has a very short process to identify the need and access that money. He's probably got to make one or two phone calls
Yeah. Right.
to say, listen, this happened. I
Yeah.
can't change it, but here's what we need now that we know this happened. I need 50, whatever, I need $80
Right.
million.
Here's the plan, and here's the need.
Right.
Yeah.
I need $80 million because that's how much a paint manufacturing facility costs.
Yeah.
All the public companies are going to be talking about that at their freaking meetings, like I listened to from Sherwin-Williams. They're going to be talking
Yeah.
about that for a long time because they have commitments to dividends and stock buybacks and other things. They
Right.
can't just find an extra $80 million so
Yeah.
fast. And I don't mean to say that, that Benjamin Moore is run in such a way that, they can just write checks for hundreds of millions, but they
Yeah.
can.
But they have that access.
They have
Absolutely.
that access,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well,
And
it was curious or interesting in one of your blogs. You talked about Sherwin-Williams doing an acquisition that was an all cash deal,
right,
which meant that the buyer got cash,
right, all cash, right. What a
but it
bunch
wasn't
of bullshit.
financed with a check.
What a
But
bunch of bullshit.
I actually
That's a
was
good
telling
lie, though. I was actually impressed with that. That's a good lie.
I was telling my wife about that, and I said, well, from now on, we just tell people, oh yeah, we bought our house in an all cash deal.
Right, exactly. Right,
Somebody got the cash.
right,
We're taking
exactly.
15 years to pay for it, but yeah,
Exactly. The dealers have that advantage that Dan doesn't have to, report quarterly.
hmm
That has enabled that group economically, they're in excellent shape.
yeah,
Benjamin Moore is probably selling, if not 2 billion a year, close enough that we'll call it
hmm
$2 billion a year, up from half that 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now, that's not all dealers. A lot of that is Ace and what have you. But hey, Ace
yeah,
are independent dealers too.
right, yeah, they are. Yeah,
Ace lives matter, Steve.
yeah. There you go. I think you've coined a new bumper sticker.
Right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, and I mean, in the end, dealers get synergies from Ace selling the brand.
Again, I hedge everything because of the circumstances of the tariffs and sort of
hmm
Trump's behavior in general. But yeah, I think that the independent channel is in great shape. I see evidence that they're slowly gaining market share,
hmm
but slowly is good enough because dealers are small enough that small gains get right to
Right.
your
Yeah.
bottom line. And there does seem to be some evidence that consumers are sort of continuing on that road towards staying local, more convenient stores. It's easier to get in and out of an Ace than it is to get in and out of a Home Depot.
Right.
And those characteristics seem to be driving a lot of decisions. And so, yes, independent Benjamin Moore dealers,
Yeah.
independent Ace dealers, and even a lot of the True Value dealers were doing well despite, sort of the troubles of that firm. So, no, I think the channel's going to remain as strong as policy allows it to remain.
Yeah.
Listen, if Trump sets the economy on fire, Steve, there's nothing
And
your
it's on
paint store
fire
is
for
going to
everybody.
do to,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be on fire for everybody.
Yeah. So.